Some residents in Washington, D.C. took to the streets last night to protest the additional police forces that have been installed by President Donald Trump's federal takeover. Residents in one D.C. neighborhood heckled law enforcement as they set up a vehicle checkpoint along a busy street. Other protesters stood at an intersection and urged drivers to turn away from an upcoming checkpoint. Groups of federal officers have been seen in various areas around the city for the past couple of days since the president announced this new plan. Scripps News Washington correspondent Stephanie Liebergen joins us now live from Capitol Hill. And Steph, what have you seen and heard since the president's plan was put in effect?
Hey, Holly, good morning. Well, during the day, there are certainly more small pockets of federal law enforcement officials out on the street. Your park police definitely out in more force. Your FBI agents, DEA agents, kind of from any federal agency, also contributing to the increased law enforcement presence on the streets of D.C. As you were just mentioning, overnight, though, that's when things really kind of kicked up. The White House has promised this increased enforcement is going to be a 24/7 operation, but that it will be significantly higher overnight. And that's when we've seen, a few hundred arrests by federal law enforcement officials. And so there's definitely an increase in law enforcement that you see out and about on the streets. But as you were just noting, and we were seeing video of some of the protests that are happening, not everybody in D.C. is happy about this increased enforcement. Some people saying it makes them feel less safe and makes them more concerned on the street. But the mayor of Washington, D.C. saying that she's trying to accept this additional help and noting that it can kind of help fill the gaps that the D.C. Police Department was already experiencing, saying that they have hundreds fewer officers than they would like to have in the D.C. Police Department. So if nothing else, the added foot traffic, the added law enforcement officials from the federal side are at least helping fill some of those gaps and make police enforcement a little more robust throughout the city. But we're just in the first few days of this. We're definitely not at the first weekend of this type of increased enforcement in D.C. And so I think that's something we'll all need to keep our eyes out for in the next few days, is how does this go over the weekend? How does this go on a Friday or a Saturday night versus a Tuesday or a Wednesday, Holly?
And Stephanie, the president has also said he expects this effort to last longer than the original 30 days. He's going to ask Congress to extend the federal takeover of the Metropolitan Police, possibly making it a long-term extension. And then he even mentioned maybe doing it in other cities. What have we heard about that?
So the federal law that the president used to federalize the Washington, D.C. Police Department does have a 30-day limit on it. In order to go beyond that 30 days, the expectation is that he would need to get approval from Congress. Basically, Congress would have to change or make an exception to the federal law. But the president yesterday indicated he thinks he can extend beyond 30 days on his own, that he can declare a national emergency, and then he can extend that takeover of the Washington, D.C. Police Department without intervention from Congress. If President Trump does try to do that, that's the type of thing that I could think we could expect to see some legal challenges to. But what you have to remember, the D.C. Police Department is a separate issue from the National Guard and the federal law enforcement that's out on the street. The federal law enforcement, the National Guard, they are 100% under the control of the president. That is within his regular purview. And he can keep those two categories out on the streets with an increased enforcement for as long as he sees fit. The D.C. Police Department, that is where you have that 30-day time limit, and it'll be curious to see whether the president tries to extend that or not, whether he tries to do it on his own. But the president already indicated he does plan to go to Congress to ask for more security funding, to ask for more money to support this anti-crime effort that he is initiating throughout the district. How much money exactly he is asking for, he hasn't specified, but Senator Lindsey Graham, one of his key allies in the Senate, has promised to help shepherd that D.C. security funding bill through Congress. Graham saying he's going to work alongside Senator Katie Britt of Alabama to try to get that done. But that bill will probably need to be filibuster-proof, which means it probably is going to need to get some support from at least a few members of the Senate, Democratic members of the Senate, in order to be able to get past that 60-vote threshold. But we won't have action on any of those things for still another couple weeks. Congress is still out on the August recess. They are not going to be back. Both the House and the Senate currently scheduled to come back the Tuesday after Labor Day. So no action from Congress in the immediate future as the president really steps up this effort to try to fight crime that he sees in Washington, D.C. as a problem. Even the local leaders and the statistics show that violent crime is at a 30-year low in the district.
All right, Scripps News Washington correspondent Stephanie Liebergen live for us. Thank you for that update, Steph.